The boy hoisted the saint into the air by her throat. After enduring years of slavery in this wretched Isekai world, she was finally preparing to strip him of his powers. But Min-jun Kim, he ripped the portal open with his own hands, pointing a trembling finger at her. He swore he would never lay eyes on that cursed saint again. Yet, at least he retained a majestic knight. They hail him. A young girl scampers. Annoyed, he snaps at her to hurry. He's so distracted that the sister catches up, confused. She wonders why he stopped, until she notices the silent man who just ignored them completely. The girl stares openly, captivated by the stranger's presence. Her brother, the title means nothing to the innocent girl, but her brother insists that man is cursed. High above in that very same dark mage is now kneeling before her in the throne room. She seems intrigued by his return. His face remains the woman but Min-jun do it. Now, she turns serious, nodding. She remembers the promise well. Don't worry, she says, but may I call you Kim from now on? She insists she didn't force the dark mage class upon him out of malice. But Kim hates this. Even so, do you truly wish the saint? She offers him rewards for all the mistreatment he endured. But Kim snaps, stop the act. The saint insists her. Kim was dragged, so he demands, what do I get? The saint promises him anything he desires, claiming the empire depends on him. He interrupts her, and spicy cold noodles, he adds. Kim spits with disgust. He needs to finish. The saint is offended, but in the mid, she cannot provide anything from his world. Defeated, the return ceremony begins. Kim is led to the Great Hall, the very spot where his nightmare began. Memories flood. The saint explains she must first remove her divine protection. Kim peels off his glove. He knows the truth. This protection was just a leash to keep him from killing her. Finally, he will be free. The mark fades. You have gained in none of your business. Kim growls. You should be worried about yourself. Without that seal, I could end you right now. The saint closes her eyes. I would accept that judgment without a fight. I started this. The protection. Kim stares at his own, a twisted grin. In a flash, the protagonist giving up was not. She finally realizes his insane plan. He intends to force the gate open with dark magic. But then, the impossible happens. The void actually but Kim, he drilled this moment thousands before the final leap. He has one last gift for her. He flips the saint a crisp middle finger. It was fun while it lasted. He mocks, let's never meet again. As he steps into the void, her pleas for him to stop fade away. Boom, rage consumes. Meanwhile, Kim crashes onto the floor of a familiar apartment. Having survived the portal, music swells as he gasps for air. His body feels shattered. That unauthorized crossing nearly killed him. He vows never to try that stunt again. But slowly, a smartphone, charging quietly in the corner. Kim grips it, whispering how much he missed this smooth glass rectangle. It really is his. But tragedy. Outside, they push forward, signaling the rendezvous point. Tension hangs thick in the air. Why are we even here? The platoon, the point man rounds, just thinking about, but the lack of Wi-Fi. Every shop is shuttered tight. The soldiers spot this lone civilian strolling through the apocalypse and freeze. This is a restrict. Kim blinks. Must be a realistic. The soldier. Kim didn't notice the fear. No. Kim feels pure irritation. Why is this low-level mutt bothering him today? But before he strikes, he realizes something critical. His demonic energy is gone. But he isn't helpless. He grabs the beast by its skull and slams it into the concrete. Music. The soldiers drop their jaws. That monster is instant roadkill. Kim dusts off his hands, muttering about stupid dogs. The squad watches in terror as he finishes it off. Kim might have lost his magic, but he is no victim. Magic or not, he refuses to be weak. He recalls the hellish physical conditioning from the other world. The pain was unbearable then, but it pays off now. Kim frowns at the corpse. Why are these monsters on Earth? He rises, blood dripping from his bare hand. The soldiers tremble as he approaches. Excuse me. Kim starts politely. Stay back. The soldier shrieks, raising his rifle in pure fear. Moments later, they sit in the transport truck. The squad eyes him warily. How did a civilian survive out here? He should be in cuffs, but the commander orders them to stand down. Finally, a soldier whispers, do you really not know what's happened to the world? Kim brushed off the question, claiming he'd just been traveling. He couldn't exactly say he'd spent the last 2 years surviving in another dimension. This wasn't the Korea he remembered. The nightmare began when he was 7. Dungeons erupted, spewing monsters, though the military barely held the line back then. Then came the Awakened, superhumans with power far beyond mere mortals. The Hunter Corporation rose to slaughter the beasts. Before that cursed saint summoned him away, the country was at peace. Now, amidst the chaos, our protagonist has one priority. Does his favorite game still work? He survived hell solely to see the ending. He prays the servers are still online. The soldier eyes him suspiciously. How can this kid know nothing when the whole world is burning? But remembering the terrifying power the boy just displayed, the soldier decides to let it slide until Kim speaks up. Did the game developers escape? Are the servers intact? He needs to know if his career path and his game survived the apocalypse. The soldier sighs, preparing to drop a heavy truth bomb. He majored in monster theory as survival necessity these days. That's why society ground to a halt. 2 years ago, the cataclysm began. Dungeons didn't just open, they evolved, more frequent, massive. But size wasn't the catastrophe. It was the titans. Giant monsters pouring out in endless, unstoppable waves. The military line collapsed. Regions were quarantined. Kim listens, the color draining from his face. But he doubles down. Okay, but does the game company exist? The soldier ignores him. How old are you? 21. The soldier grimaces. Then brace yourself. You're heading to the army for the next few years. Kim blinks. Years? The soldier nods. Personnel shortage. Mandatory service is now 5 years. Devastation crashes over him. He just wanted to go home and rank up. 5 years in boot camp wasn't in the plan. Then his phone buzzes a draft notice from the government. Is this a joke? He begs. The soldier shakes his head. It's as real as it gets. Denial sets in. He has to enlist without even a physical exam. And the report date? Tomorrow. A 24-hour death sentence. We need warm bodies, the soldier explains. Go check the terminal at the shelter if you don't believe me. Kim verifies the info. Memories surface of when his parents vanished, leaving him to lock himself away in a gaming addiction. A shut-in summoned to the hellscape of Isgard, completely alone. But he made it back to this paradise where games exist. The food tastes like victory. He devours his meal, ordering seconds while the waitress stares in awe at his bottomless stomach. But the data confirms the nightmare. Monster damage is skyrocketing. Humanity is teetering on the brink of extinction. And the draft notice is absolute. No escape. If he commanded the full peak of his black mage arts, he could seal the dungeons with a snap. But his mana is suppressed. He needs a strategy. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off. He shouts in pure excitement. It's perfect. He'll fix the problem himself, from the inside. The next day, he marches to the battalion. He strolls in, casually eating a skewer, surrounded by a sea of nervous recruits. The other men look like they're marching to their deaths, but our protagonist walks with purpose. Sorrow hangs in the air like a heavy fog. The loudspeaker crackles. All recruits to the auditorium. Now, Kim smirks. The army, a vacation compared to Isgard. Inside, the officer starts screaming insults. Push, move it. The aggression is palpable, leaving Kim genuinely surprised. It reminds him of his demonic instructor back in the other world. Should have killed that guy before I left, he muses. Compared to that monster, these drill sergeants are adorable. The yelling stops. The officer scans the room. Before we start, who wants the Hunter Division? Better treatment. 3 million one base pay. Any takers? Silence. Not a single hand goes up. It's a death sentence. Just a formality, I guess, the officer sighs. But then, a voice cuts through the fear. One volunteer steps forward. The protagonist was summoned to the front lines. With a single stomp, he shattered the earth beneath him, launching into the air with godlike force. Not a single soldier expected such a terrifying display of raw power from a mere recruit. He crashed down right beside the commander, shaking the ground. With eyes burning with ambition, Recruit Kim declared, I will join the elite Hunter Division. Let's take you back to the forgotten Keanu in the realm of Isgard. Hidden deep within that rocky wasteland, a dark cave awaited. Our hero mused on the cursed fate of a black mage. Their path is always chaotic, a lonely road where no one suffers more than him. Even with god-tier skills, running out of demonic energy means certain death. Unlike other mages, his power refuses to regenerate naturally. He must slaughter monsters corrupted by demonic energy just to survive. It is a brutal, inefficient cycle of constant killing. His dark reputation makes finding a party impossible. Alone in the shadows, he posed a question to his potential hostage. "Tell me, what is the absolute fastest way to refill this draining power?" He stared into the bonfire, but silence answered him. His hostages were already cold corpses. But from the shadows of the dead, a new nightmare emerged. The forgotten lord of the cave, the giant spider. Yet, our boy simply stood there, still waiting for an answer. He had waited ages for this beast, and boredom was setting in. The cave was already painted with the blood of the spider's endless minions. Realizing its kin were slaughtered, the beast let out a furious roar. It demanded blood for blood. "Wrong answer," our protagonist scoffed. The behemoth lunged, but he halted its lethal charge with a single hand. That was also incorrect. Finally, he decided to demonstrate the only true solution to his energy problem. He obliterated the spider's head in an instant. To restore maximum power, he must hunt the strongest prey. Back in the present, our boy stood before his superior. His orders were simple. Hold his position until the Hunter Corporation arrived to collect him. The commander eyed him curiously. "You have spirit, kid. But what drives a recruit to volunteer for the Hellish Hunter Division?" The situation was grim. Most awakened soldiers were fleeing back to conventional units to avoid the slaughter. "I have unfinished business," the boy replied coolly. "My destiny lies inside the dungeons." The room fell dead silent. The commander stared, convinced this young man had completely lost his mind. But in an army of freaks, madness is a virtue. A grin spread across the commander's face. This kid was entertaining. He even decided to. In Korea, it is a realm of by joining. It was a wild 10 stars in 5 years. He would clear every dungeon, become a national legend, and swim in military gold. Suddenly, the commander introduced the recruit immediately. Our boy narrowed his eyes. Why was a high-ranking officer so deferential to a mere sergeant? The sergeant's gaze pierced through him. "If you are awakened, prove it. Open your status window right now. Show me." But this was in Isgard, the system was second nature, though rarely used. He wondered how different the Korean interface would be. He summoned the window, but confusion washed over him. The sergeant barked, "Well, what does it say?" Kim hesitated, struggling to find the words. It says there is an error." The sergeant's face "It has been 10 years. He gestured for. She rejected the title of. The commander waved. "There will be no flustered before the chaos. Enlisting as a regular soldier instead of an executive officer. That is a rough path. Rare talents like her are 1 in a million." The girl thanked him for the praise, but a flush rose to her cheeks. His words were already making her shy. Just as the commander spoke, a jeep screeched to a halt outside. He turned to her with a grin, mentioning some entertaining news he had received earlier. It seemed she might be getting a very interesting partner. He asked right away if she wanted to meet this mystery recruit. Outside the massive complex, it was truly a sight to, because he was, if not for orders from high, but our boy did not. The sergeant gestured to a massive object nearby. If our protagonist could shift it even a single inch, he would pass. He had 10 minutes on the clock. This was no ordinary. To our protagonist, the sergeant scowled. Far too many. The sergeant knew the kid had jumped 5 meters high before, but he still doubted him. In his eyes, this guy was just another liar. Back in the hall, he knew our protagonist. The commander had never seen such a thing in his life, and his expectations were sky high. Meanwhile, our boy instantly recognized the mineral. That stone was. Our boy wound up, preparing to strike the stone with a fist. The sergeant panicked, and even the female recruit gasped in surprise. Kim was eager. He let the punch fly. To everyone's horror, the indestructible mineral began to crack. A split second later, it shattered completely under his overwhelming force. But he stood there. The commander looked terrible. It was beyond. Later that day, before joining for weeks of hell, through this torture, at least, he sprinted up. If he were at his peak, the uniform would. But the best part, our boy knew about the secret computer room. As long as he followed the rules, no one would bother him. This place was paradise. Free gym access, delicious food, a fat salary, and time to play video games. He was living the dream. As he ran, he shouted that the Hunter Corporation was the best company on Earth, leaving the other dying recruits in disbelief. Suddenly, the sergeant spotted movement at the summit. The first recruit had arrived, bursting with energy. As he reached the top, the sergeant realized it was Kim. His opinion of the boy was shifting from doubt to awe. It usually took an hour to finish this run. Our protagonist crushed it in record time, and he looked like he was having the time of his life. Our boy marched up to claim his prize. The sergeant had promised a reward for anyone finishing under 30 minutes, and he was a man of his word. The sergeant handed over a small slip of paper. It was a music leave pass. Kim was already scheming how to spend it. Meanwhile, the sergeant couldn't hide his excitement about the recruit's terrifying potential. He finished the run in just 21 minutes. No recruit in history had ever earned this reward before. But physical strength is merely the prologue. The sergeant needs to peel back the layers and see if our boy crumbles when staring into the abyss of true monstrosity. With expectations sky high, the sergeant locks his gaze on the recruit, watching every move like a hawk stalking prey. Back at the barracks, the squad is absolutely wrecked, souls leaving their bodies. But the pain pays off. Some notice their attribute points ticking upward. Everyone is glued to their status screens, celebrating their gains. Our boy, however, just listens from the shadows. They celebrate a single point, pathetic. He remembers the hellscape of Isgard, where 10 points a day was the minimum, and his instructor was the devil in human skin. Suddenly, an extra spots the golden ticket a leave pass in Kim's hand. He asks what the plan is, eyes wide with jealousy. It is unheard of. The instructor himself claimed such a reward was an impossible myth for a recruit. They swarm him, desperate to know his secret training routine. But this warmth, this admiration, it feels alien to our boy. In his past life as a dark mage, he was a pariah. People fled his presence like the plague, convinced he was a walking curse. But then the magic words are spoken. Computer room. The moment Kim hears those syllables, his priorities shift instantly. He can't believe his luck. The Holy Grail is unlocked. It is 9 p.m., which means the night is young. Kim runs the calculations. He decides that 2 hours of sleep is plenty of downtime for a human body. Back in Isgard, 1 hour was a luxury, 2 was practically a coma. Finally, the protagonist can feed his true addiction, gaming. The sun rises, and the nightmare training cycle reboots without mercy. The sergeant drops a bombshell, a 40-kilometer run in 2 hours or starve. While others despair, Kim grins. His all-night gaming session netted him 10 levels. As they run, a recruit glances over in horror. Kim hasn't even broken a sweat. To him, this isn't training, it's a morning stroll. And this is after 4 weeks of surviving on 2 hours of sleep a night, fueled purely by video games. They call him a monster, but he just shrugs it off. He even loops back, carrying water for his dying comrades like a benevolent god. Like moths to a flame, the exhausted recruits swarm around him, begging for a drop of salvation. Suddenly, a shadow falls over the group. The lieutenant has arrived, and his face screams pure disappointment. It is the final week, yet only half have met the bare minimum. He spits out the verdict. This is the worst squad in history. Our protagonist ignores the insults and focuses on something else. Why is this guy talking about himself in the third person? It is bizarre. The speech continues. The lieutenant predicts half of them will be corpses within a month due to weak mentalities. At this rate, they are destined for failure. But now, the real, usually dungeon, these permanent zone, that is their destination. As the realization sinks in, panic begins to ripple through the ranks. The commander watches the fear with satisfaction. To him, these recruits are racehorses, and stress is the whip. They require, the lieutenant offers it. He expects, he tries to hide in a sea of, they arrive at a confusion reigns until screech. A massive truck barrels toward them, nearly turning the poor recruits into roadkill. Dust settles, fear spikes and the doors open. But Kim, the lieutenant the objective is simple. The clock is, they are handed our protagonist it reeks of blood. All he cared about. The lieutenant scoffed at the arrogance, but realization struck him like a slap in the face. This wasn't just a loudmouth. He was staring at the most talented recruit in the batch. His attitude did a complete 180. But there was a catch. Kim scanned his potential However, he stepped forward. When they lunge, you grab a he finished his time was up. The beasts burst forth in a frenzy. But instead of attacking, they bolted straight for the dungeon entrance. The rookies were baffled, but Kim just smirked. They were running home. His squads, it was basic monster psycho. That was the key. The lieutenant cut the moment. A wave, the signal flipped. Kim actually picked up the operations deep inside the dungeon. A lone squad of Kim was among them. The rumors of his monstrous physical stats had already swept through the instructor ranks like wildfire. His training scores were flawless, but a simulation is not a dungeon. Now, they would see what he was truly made of. Unbeknownst to the rookies, the wolves were already closing the net. But Kim, he had felt their presence long ago. He could feel the beasts praising his own. Eyes glowed in the darkness as the pack advanced. Kim kept his voice steady. Don't panic. That armor is tough. Trust it. I'll take point. A wolf lunged, jaws snapping for his throat. Kim didn't even flinch. Bam, a single strike. The beast hit the ground, stone dead before it even knew it had been hit. Behind him, chaos, death was coming. Kim looked down at the in a real rage. Surrounded from the shadows, the change was It was uncanny. He moved and commanded like a drill sergeant with years of trench warfare under his belt. More impressively, the instructors stepped into the light, clapping slowly. Excellent work. The test was over. They were cleared to leave. Kim's eyes lit up. So, about that vacation time, the instructor glared. Shut it, recruit. Debriefing first. Kim sighed, analyzing the mix of harshness and hidden care. Great. He thought. The instructors are total tsundeers. They turned to. The ground violently lurched. The dungeon began to quake. The instructors frantically tapped their comms, getting only static. Is this an earthquake? A recruit stammered. No. Kim. Panic erupted around the exit back to reality. Even the instructors were paralyzed. They were completely cut off from the outside world. No signal, no backup. The dungeon wasn't just shifting, it was evolving into a nightmare right before their eyes. Priority number 1, keep the rookies alive. The instructors corralled the trembling group, forcing a mask of composure as they announced that an unexpected anomaly had occurred. But they fed the group a comforting lie. Don't worry, they claimed. We just wait here for 1 hour, and the gate will reappear. But their eyes betrayed the terrifying truth. In a dungeon, an hour is one instructor tried. It was a desperate attempt to stop. They used this dungeon precisely because it was supposed to be safe and predictable. The fact that the eternal gate had slammed shut was truly sinister. Something had changed the rules. While the rookies bought the lie, despite their combat in an open, their only stroke of luck was it was the worst case. When a portal collapses, it's a one-way ticket. The gate vanishes the moment the seal locks. If they ever want to see the sun again, they have to slaughter every single monster inside. The realization left. The odds were suicide. Blind to what horror, but freezing up meant death. They had to move now while adrenaline still fueled their limbs. Standing still was just waiting to be slaughtered. If the instructors had their the instructor's mind putting the recruits, the instructor wrestled with the impossible, desperate to find a path that didn't end in a total massacre. He clung to his soldiers. One recruit was on the. Suddenly, before Kim could answer, a monstrous roar shattered the silence. A sound that vibrated in their very bones. It hit the instructor's mind like a sledgehammer. The pressure was in. His assistant rushed to catch him, but Kim's voice cut through the air like a whip. Don't touch him, unless you want to end up just like him. Kim instantly took command. Earlier, he effortlessly hoisted the unconscious bodies of the instructors, tossing them toward the stunned recruits. Watch over them, don't let them die. Kim turned to face the abyss. To them, he looked the truth. He wasn't crazy. He was ecstatic. His heart pounded not with fear, but with anticipation. The air here was thick with demonic energy. That toxic aura was exactly what had crushed the instructors. The pressure was simply too much for normal humans to bear. It's no surprise they fell. Even the elite warriors of Isgard require magical shielding against this miasma. For a regular human, it's practically poison. But for a black mage, this wasn't poison. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Finally, our boy had found the source of the feast. Deep inside the cave, the energy density was crushing. The silence was absolute. No lesser monsters dared to breathe in the presence of the king. A smirk played on Kim's lips. He had tracked the beast by scent alone, sensing a massive presence cowering in the shadows. He didn't expect a reunion like this, a darkhound, a nightmare from the other world, far surpassing the power of any earthly wolf. In his past life, the mere sight of one had sent him fleeing in terror, trembling like a leaf in the wind. But the tables had turned. He was no longer that weakling. Seeing this beast now brought only a twisted sense of joy. Our boy waited for the creature to make its move. He didn't need a battle. He just needed one strike to drain it dry. The wretched beast was utterly obliterated. But even in the wake of victory, Kim wrinkled his nose. The metallic stench of blood hanging in the air was absolutely revolting. Thick waves of demonic energy began to flood the chamber. The Darkhound was a nightmare to kill precisely for this reason. Upon death, it released a catastrophic amount of dark power. For a normal human, this miasma was lethal enough to stop their heart instantly. But for our protagonist, this toxic fog was completely harmless. In fact, as his body began to absorb it, he felt a strange reaction. A familiar hunger was awakening within his veins. Kim smirked, overflowing with confidence. As a black mage, this was merely fuel. It felt incredibly satisfying to harvest energy after such a long drought. But a question gnawed at him. What was a beast from the lands of Isgard doing here on Earth? Based on the instructor's earlier confusion, this creature was an anomaly, a completely unknown variable. Throughout their entire military training, the concept of demonic energy had never been mentioned once. Crossing dimensions should be impossible for these monsters. Only a singularity like our protagonist, or the saint who summoned him, should possess that power. The pieces didn't fit. The confusion weighed heavily on him. Something massive, something dark, was brewing in the shadows. Kim sighed, scanning the area for the beast's corpse. He realized with a groan that he would have to write a tedious report about all of this. Near the exit, the instructors lay motionless in the dirt. Finally, one stirred. The sergeant's eyes snapped open, panic seizing him as he realized he was surrounded by recruits. His first instinct was for his squad. He demanded to know if his comrades were safe, his memory a blur of chaos. A bald recruit stepped forward, dropping the bombshell. The protagonist had ventured into the dungeon alone. The sergeant's face darkened with dread as he grasped the situation. That maneuver was suicidal. Such reckless insubordination was grounds for immediate dishonorable discharge from the army. Yet, looking at the twisted circumstances, the sergeant knew it wasn't that simple. Expelling him now would be nearly impossible. As his mind raced through the variables, a recruit's shout broke his concentration. "Instructor, look!" Emerging from the darkness was our protagonist. He was dragging the massive carcass of the Darkhound as if it weighed nothing. The instructors froze in shock. They had never laid eyes on a beast of this magnitude. Kim calmly instructed them to examine the neutralization target. The sergeant stared at the corpse. Was this the monster that knocked them all unconscious? The answer was undeniable. The recruits watched in awe, unable to believe our boy handled a threat that wiped out the pros. As Kim stood amidst the whispers, a mysterious light pierced the gloom. The dungeon gate was reacting. The exit was opening. Freedom was within reach. Visibly shaken, the instructor asked the question on everyone's mind. "Did you really do this all by yourself?" Our boy simply offered a sincere, innocent smile. That expression told the sergeant everything he needed to know. The sergeant turned to his partner, ordering him to evacuate the recruits immediately. He would follow shortly. He needed a moment alone with this anomaly. He looked Kim in the eye. He instructed him to report every single detail of this incident directly to the lieutenant. "Leave nothing out," he commanded, "not even our failure." He admitted that by losing consciousness, the instructors had endangered the entire squad. There were no excuses for such incompetence. Everyone was breathing right now solely because of the protagonist's efforts. The sergeant offered his deepest gratitude. Our protagonist rubbed the back of his neck, visibly embarrassed by such a solemn declaration. The sergeant insisted, his voice firm. A real man must admit his faults. Since he had been knocked cold, he couldn't write the report himself. The shame would definitely keep him awake tonight. Our protagonist blinked. He certainly hadn't expected to be showered with compliments during the final grueling week of training. He turned to leave, but reality flickered. A holographic screen materialized before his eyes. The system, error resolved. Our boy stared at the text. He didn't even know there was an error in the first place, let alone that it needed fixing. Ridiculous, he muttered, cursing the glitchy interface. But then, his eyes drifted to his stats. Attributes, 60 points across the board. Demonic energy, 10 points. His corruption skill was sitting at a pitiful ranky. Our boy frowned. This was very strange. The status window was baffling enough, but the title he had been granted was the real kicker. Luna Nuna is my favorite character. He groaned. He was the founding father of that ridiculous cult. Luna was a character from the game he obsessed over. Back in Isgard, he had started the fan club as a joke to scare off weird admirers. Ironically, it only attracted even stranger fanatics. Analyzing the numbers, the cold truth hit him. He had been severely nerfed. The score was even more pathetic than he anticipated. His vast reserves of demonic energy were gone. He had expected a penalty for crossing dimensions, but this. From his legendary arsenal of skills, only a single one remained, and it was weak. This was a far cry from the power he hoped to retain. The absurdity of it all made him want to retch. In this pathetic state, achieving his grand ambitions seemed impossible. However, despair was for the weak. He could rebuild. He had reached the pinnacle of power once before, and he would climb that mountain again. Priority 1, immediate power recovery. He needed strength to protect the megacorporation developing his games. A fire lit in his eyes. This was possible. Compared to the hellish trials of Isgard, leveling up here would be a walk in the park. Meanwhile, chaos reigned outside the training center. The dungeon had sealed itself mid-exercise, sending everyone into a panic. To make matters worse, the rumors were already flying. A rookie recruit had annihilated a new species of monster. While the elite instructors stood helpless, the legend was just beginning. The graduation ceremony was ruined. Chaos reigned, leaving the recruits stranded at the training center with nowhere to go. Whispers spread like wildfire. Everyone demanded the truth about Kim's rampage, and the bald recruit was all too happy to spill every gritty detail. Rumors of an instant promotion circulated through the ranks. Meanwhile, in the commander's office, destiny was calling. Kim had been summoned. The atmosphere was suffocating. The commander welcomed him with a polite smile, ignoring the lieutenant trembling in punishment just feet away. With a dismissive wave, the commander released the disgraced officer. Now, it was just the predator and the prodigy alone in the room. The commander's voice was cold steel. A lieutenant who ignores safety protocols deserves no mercy, and he made that crystal clear. But the old veteran cut the pleasantries. He did not bring Kim here for small talk. He had business to discuss. Kim had destroyed the curve, outperforming every other recruit. Now, the commander dangled a tempting proposal before him. A heron standing among chickens. A crude metaphor, perhaps, but it fit perfectly. Kim was simply built different. He was a predator among prey. The commander knew he was standing in the presence of a once-in-a-generation monster. To witness such potential with his own eyes, the old man counted himself lucky to be alive in this era. He never expected to find a dragon hiding among snakes. Kim stood silent, stoic, waiting to hear the catch. To the commander, wasting this talent would be a crime against the nation. He knew Kim craved power and speed above all else. Military law stated a recruit must wait 1 year for promotion. But for an anomaly like Kim, the rules were about to be rewritten. If Kim agreed to deploy to the Gangwon region, the commander vowed to use every ounce of his authority. He would pull every string to shatter the waiting period. If Kim took the assignment, his rise would be instant. Kim did not answer immediately. Silence stretched in the room as his mind raced. The commander hesitated, fearing the offer was too dangerous. Maybe the location was a deal breaker. But Kim was calculating something else entirely. The 104th Division. His squad mates had warned him about it. A frozen hell where dungeons erupted without warning. It was the most extreme battlefield in existence. For Kim, this was not a warning. It was an invitation. Danger meant growth. If he could survive and level up, the location was irrelevant. A guaranteed promotion was just the cherry on top. Power was the deal was sealed. Departure day, he begged to stay but the recruit swore on his life, wiping snot from his face. He asked if the rumor was true. Was Kim really heading to Chirwan? Kim nodded. The goodbye was short. Kim watched the loudest mouth in the platoon fade into the distance. Silence fell. He was completely alone. But destiny did not keep him waiting. A massive transport truck roared up to the curb. A giant of a man stepped out. A scarred veteran with a face that had seen hell. He apologized for the delay. Heavy snow had blocked the path. Kim frowned. The scar-faced soldier barked an order. Get in. They were moving out now. Kim hopped into the back, ready for the next chapter. The real but there was hazing. Seniority games. If they tried to bully him, his patience would snap, and that would be catastrophic. He exhaled a long insubordination. They were entering the territory of the 2nd Battalion. Here, even the weather was an enemy. They arrived at a bleak. He ordered the squad to feed and instruct the rookie. The soldiers inside lit up like sharks, smelling blood. They swarmed him with one soldier snatched Kim's backpack. He ordered a subordinate to dump it out. The territory marking had begun. Kim tensed up. They stared at him with twisted amusement. A fresh toy to break. One of them leaned in. Why choose this hellhole? With his scores, his new squadmates, the interrogation began immediately. They demanded it. One finger. Chill out, Sarge. It wasn't just a push-up. No one in the entire A menacing shadow loomed over the group. A voice dripping with authority ordered them to knock it off immediately. The red-haired soldier cursed the fun was officially over. Hearing that voice, Kim's eyes narrowed. He recognized that tone. It was Sergeant Lee. The protagonist's memory is sharp as a blade. Even if the audience is lost, Kim knows exactly who this tyrant is. Whispers filled the barracks. They said the sergeant exists only to ruin their lives. Apparently, he just returned from suspension for tormenting rookies a little too hard. It was only for days. Veins popped in but the moment he claimed his territory in the barracks, the beast tamed himself. He flopped onto the floor and immediately pulled out his phone. He was scrolling through news. Dong Jin, the poor guy, was saddled with the worst job, babysitting the protagonist. Kim blinked, surprised to meet his senior in such a chaotic environment. Dong Jin introduced himself with perfect military etiquette. But leaning close, he whispered the real plan. Let's hit the mess hall. I've got a special pass. He led our boy to paradise, promising he could take whatever he craved. I have a big appetite. That kindness came between mouthful. Dong Jin sighed. That last part made Kim's ears perk up. Information was power, and he was being locked out. The rules are strict, Dong Jin admitted. Even a private first class like me just has to suck it up and endure. Kim frowned. Is there no other way? Promotion, his colleague replied grimly. But climbing the ranks here is like scaling a cliff without a rope. A fire lit in Kim's eyes. Hard work wasn't an issue. If promotion was the key to freedom, he would seize it. Don't get your hopes up, Dong Jin warned. Making sergeant is nearly impossible. He confessed he'd failed the exam multiple times, stuck as a grunt for 3 long years. But our protagonist just patted his back. Don't worry, Kim decided silently. When I rise, I'll drag you up with me. Suddenly, shadows fell over their table. Other soldiers had arrived to check out the fresh meat and the delicious spread. Leading them was Corporal Roberval. Trying to keep the peace, Dong Jin offered the bully a share of their feast. Roberval didn't hesitate. He dove into the food like a starving beast. Our boy watched this weirdo with cold, calculating eyes. I won't snitch, Roberval grunted with a mouthful of food. But if you two are useless in training tomorrow, you're dead meat. Dong Jin stammered that he was just explaining the training regimen. Things were different here, more dangerous. Roberval took offense to the tone. You think I don't know that? His arrogance was suffocating. And our boy's patience finally snapped. It was time for a lesson in humility. Kim tapped into his dark energy, focusing a curse of corruption straight at the corporal's gut. The reaction was instant. A storm brewed inside Roberval's stomach. He froze, realizing his fate was sealed. Disaster struck. He soiled his pants right there in the mess hall. Staring at the food in horror, he was convinced it was poisoned. What's wrong? They asked innocently. Nothing, Roberval squeaked, waddling away in shame. Kim smirked. His corruption ability was a beautiful thing. With the trash taken out, Kim focused on the real challenge, firearms training. Tomorrow, they would handle the Army's standard rifles, loaded with special high-velocity rounds. A normal weapon kicks like a mule, but these monster killers had recoil that could dislocate a shoulder. The noise alone was deafening. In a world crawling with beasts, firepower was the only language that mattered. It's brutal at first, Dong Jin warned. Expect to get chewed out and bruised up. He compared it to the difference between a pony's kick and a stallion's fury. Kim just nodded, understanding the physics perfectly. But Dong Jin didn't know who he was talking to. Back in the realm of Isgard, Kim wielded weapons with the recoil of a charging elephant. A smile tugged at his lips. He couldn't wait for tomorrow. At last, thunderous, Kim actually clicks his. The rest of the platoon is left with their jaws on the floor. A mere rookie landing 19 hits. That kind of accuracy is unheard of for a fresh recruit. Even the redhead, they can barely hide. The other soldiers swarm him, demanding the secret to his aim. Our boy just shrugs calmly. He simply followed instructions, nothing more. The supervisor nods. The redhead is pumped. Doubts aside, but Kim is focused on the net. He admits he never expected. From what he knows, the beasts might be weakened for training, but they are still moving targets. And unlike paper silhouettes, these things fight back. There's a catch, though. Dong Jin tells him to relax. The drill breaks. Dong Jin is still raving. Dong Jin laughs. Unlike Sergeant Lee, Kim does the math. Kim ponders the setup. Since the poor rumor has it, partners are chosen by a twisted lottery system. Moments later, our boy arrives at the special training facility. The supervising sergeant barks out orders. The exercise commences in 5 minutes. Gear up or get out. As the protagonist secures his gear, a shadow looms over him. Someone is complaining about being stuck with a rookie. Of course, it is Roberval, that absolute scumbag. The guy thinks he is God's gift to the military. Kim stifles a sigh. He did not expect to be shackled to such an arrogant jerk for this mission. Judging by the sneer on Roberval's face, he still has not learned his lesson from their last encounter. He is begging to be humbled. Roberval gets right in his face. He claims the squad average is 3 minutes flat, and sneers that the rookie better not drag him down. He threatens that Kim will regret it if he is too slow, but our boy just stares back calmly. Why would a dragon feel intimidated by an ant? Roberval mistakes the silence for fear. He leans in, mocking him, asking if the little rookie has already lost his nerve. Kim realizes talking to this idiot is a waste of oxygen. He simply says he will try to do better. Roberval spits back that he does not want effort, he wants results. If the kid finishes after him, he is a dead man walking. He points to the arena, telling our protagonist to watch closely. The first pair is about to begin. 2 soldiers stand at the ready, tension radiating off them. Both are experienced sergeants, locked and loaded. The platform lowers, taking them into the underground training pit. Officially, this is a tactical drill. The objective, neutralize hostile creatures while ensuring the safety of innocent civilians. But in reality, it is a savage race. It is all about who can slaughter their way to the end and smash that completion button first. The spectators watch with bated breath. Kim's sharp eyes catch a detail on the display board. The monster icons vary in size. Roberval grunts an explanation. It depends on the beast. The larger the icon, the deadlier the threat. Each lane is stocked with 2 monsters, but the spawn is completely randomized. Luck plays as much a role as skill. Soldiers are blind to what they are fighting until they are face to face with it. Suddenly, one of the men rounds a corner and confronts a massive, mutated frog. The beast lashes out with a whip-like tongue, but the sergeant barely dodges in time. Meanwhile, the soldier in the other lane seems to be tearing through the course. Our protagonist narrows his eyes. The difficulty of the monster directly dictates the speed of the clear. It is an unfair game. The faster soldier got lucky. He only had to dispatch a giant rat. Thinking he has this in the bag, he rushes to the next zone, only to freeze. A gargantuan worm bursts from the ground. Meanwhile, the damn frog in the first lane is tanking bullet after bullet. The balance of the match has just shifted violently. The previous soldier barely survived the encounter, his frustration boiling over as he struck the final blow. With a heavy sigh, He slammed his fist onto the completion button. The screen flashed the disappointing results. The exercise was completed in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Murmurs rippled through the recruits. The giant worm had stalled the candidate longer than anyone expected. But victory meant nothing here. Not only was his time abysmal, but he had struck a forbidden target in the chaos. Instant disqualification. While the failed candidates argued over their incompetence, Roberval's sharp eyes caught the scent of opportunity. He noticed a wager being made. This piqued our protagonist's interest immediately. A mischievous glint entered his eye as he challenged Roberval to a bet of their own. The terms were simple yet dangerous. The loser would grant the winner one absolute wish, sworn on their word of honor. Roberval laughed, finding the rookie's boldness amusing, overflowing with arrogant confidence. The elite recruit accepted the challenge without a second thought. He sneered, claiming a mere rookie couldn't possibly grant his desires, so he demanded Kim's salary for 3 months instead. Kim just scoffed. The man's greed was pitifully predictable. Without hesitation, Kim agreed. If he lost, 3 months of his hard-earned wages would belong to this arrogance. Dongjun felt the air grow heavy with hostility. He watched with a knot in his stomach, terrified for what our protagonist was getting himself into. The sergeant's voice cut through the tension. Next pair. It was time. Kim stepped forward, ready to humiliate this extra in front of everyone. The elevator shuddered and began their descent, plunging them deep into the subterranean training grounds. Kim admitted to himself that he had fallen for Roberval's cheap provocation, but he wasn't mature enough to let that slide. When someone pokes the bear bites back. The test officially commenced. The entire platoon knew about the high-stakes bet, and not a single soul believed the protagonist stood a chance. Dongjun watched the screens, trembling in the viewing deck alongside the other soldiers. Suddenly, the entire facility violently shook. While panic spread like wildfire, Dongjun realized this was no earthquake. Something massive was moving down there. Down in the arena, even our protagonist was confused by the tremors. That is, until he looked up and saw the nightmare blocking his path. A colossal demonic entity stood before him, having already swallowed the test monster whole, music. Kim paused, assessing the chaos, as the behemoth locked its gaze onto him. To this monster, our boy was nothing more than a dessert course. The beast didn't hesitate. It hurled the carcass of the first monster, a giant rat, straight at our boy, savoring the hunt. Kim dodged the flying debris with a grimace. He had plans for fried chicken tonight, and he wasn't about to let this training delay his dinner. But there was a catch: he had to win the bet. That meant 0 strikes on the civilian targets. Firing blindly was too risky, and the beast was enraged. Kim decided to switch tactics, channeling his latent powers to strike the creature with raw demonic strength. Dark energy surged through his fist, connecting with an explosive impact that completely obliterated the monster's arm. The creature roared in agony, now that it was stunned. Kim raised his rifle to finish it off the traditional way. But then, something shocking happened. The beast's flesh began to bubble and knit together, regenerating the lost limb into a massive, organic blade. Our protagonist paused, realizing this was no ordinary glitched simulation. Up in the booth, the extras were losing their minds. This was a potential catastrophe in the making. Meanwhile, unaware of Kim's struggle, Roberval breezed through his course. The sergeant's face went pale. He recognized the abomination immediately, the Cyclops, a legendary horror known as the Devour Demon. This species was a nightmare whenever it consumed an energy source. Its regeneration capabilities skyrocketed, but the beast's behavior was all wrong. A Cyclops only attacks when threatened, yet this one had evolved instantly after eating. The sergeant wondered what on earth our protagonist did to provoke such wrath. Down below, Kim danced around the attacks with terrifying calm. The creature, however, was foaming at the mouth, determined to end him. Kim sighed. Violence would be so much faster, but the rules required him to use the rifle. He had to play the soldier, not the demon king. He unleashed a rapid volley of gunfire, shredding the creature's single eye. Darkness instantly claimed the monster's vision. Kim noted the damage. Regenerating a complex organ like an eye would take time. The beast was now fighting blind, yet it lashed out into the empty air with terrifying precision. A razor-sharp claw missed Kim's neck by a mere inch. Music. He was impressed, even blinded. Its killer instincts were razor-sharp. But instincts alone aren't enough to touch him. Our boy weaved through the assault effortlessly. The Cyclops roared, its fury doubling as it realized its prey was mocking it. Then, the unthinkable happened. The protagonist caught the creature's final, desperate blow with his bare hand. He wondered why they would put such a lethal beast in a rookie test. It wasn't the test. The monster was reacting to the demonic energy radiating from our boy's very soul. Realizing the recruit was facing a death sentence, the sergeant sprinted toward the training ground. This was a disaster that never should have happened. Guilt crashed over the sergeant. No recruit could possibly survive a Cyclops. It was a massacre waiting to happen. He ran with desperation in his heart, praying to every god listening that the kid was still breathing. Meanwhile, on the other side of the wall, Roberval finished his test with a smug grin, completely unaware that he wasn't the only monster in the building. With a time of just over 2 minutes and 30 seconds, he was absolutely certain of his victory. He was already mentally spending his winnings. But the moment he reached the finish line, reality slapped him in the face. Our protagonist was already there waiting for him. Kim looked at Roberval's stunned expression with amusement. With a devilish smirk on his face, our protagonist slowly pressed the completion button, sealing his dominance. Roberval froze, his mind refusing to process the impossible sight before him. Meanwhile, the sergeant stood over the corpse of the beast. He couldn't wrap his head around how a mere recruit had annihilated such a monster. Back at the platoon, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone swarmed our protagonist, celebrating his record-breaking clear time. Not only was he fast, but he had also soloed a Cyclops. The whispers began some feared a disaster was looming, while others were in awe of his strength. Dongjun rushed over, panic in his eyes, checking for injuries. But Kim remained calm as a still lake, assuring him that everything was perfectly fine. His friends let out a breath of relief, soaking in the glory. But in the corner, Roberval was boiling with rage. Then, a voice cut through the noise, reminding everyone of the bet and the rookie was the winner. That was the breaking point. Roberval lashed out, slapping the poor extra. He screamed that the match was rigged and demanded the bet be cancelled immediately. His ego couldn't. He claimed he had to bet. He barked at everyone that it was injustice, trying to pressure the protagonist and his friend into submission. Dongjun stammered, overwhelmed by the aggression. Roberval had gone full tyrant, deciding to crush anyone who stood in his way. Watching this unfold, Kim looked at his hands, but seeing Roberval act like this, that could not be forgiven. Just as tensions peaked, a heavy presence stepped into the circle. The sergeant. His voice was cold. Blinded by rage and not seeing who spoke, Roberval snapped. He told the jerk to shut the hell up. The silence was deafening. The platoon went quiet as the grave. Sergeant Lee had arrived to drop the hammer. Roberval finally saw who he had insulted, and his face went pale. Roberval tried to deflect, asking if the sergeant was just showing off for the newbies. Lee stared him down and replied, "The only one posturing here is you. Even now, when the world doesn't bow to you." Kim watched with pure. Lee gave him one. Lee nodded grim. Later that day, the rumor mill started turning. Someone mentioned Sergeant Lee was a legend who had been promoted twice due to top-tier scores. But that path was clear. Lee was one of the last to ascend that way. Hearing this, Kim's eyes lit up. He asked the golden question, "Is a special promotion still possible?" His friend nodded, but it wasn't a. Kim understood the game. 2 days as a he inwardly wished for. Report incoming. A massive swarm of mutated bats had descended on the oil reserve. All hunters were ordered to mobilize immediately. A chaotic grin spread across our boy's face. These weren't normal bats. They were the size of children, swarming in flocks, and terrifyingly agile. Worse yet, they breathed fire, and they were nesting in an oil depot. One wrong move, and the entire facility would go up in a nuclear-level explosion. The perimeter. A soldier raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. "Stop," his squadmate screamed. One spark, and we're all ash. The place is soaked in fuel. The rifleman gritted his teeth, hating his own helplessness. They couldn't shoot, but they couldn't just stand there. They had to be cautious until backup arrived. The air was thick with. The soldier lowered his weapon, defeated. They watched the monsters blot out the sky, paralyzed by indecision. Suddenly, a calm voice, their eyes wide, but Kim didn't care. He unleashed his demon. These pests were absolutely nothing. In fact, his dark aura acted like a beacon. He turned himself into the perfect bait. Reinforced. Suddenly, the rear guard shot Sergeant Lee. His men were frozen, but it was in you maniac. But Kim, his goal was total. Kim fired a pulse of dark energy into the man's gut. The soldier collapsed, clutching his stomach in agony as his bowels betrayed him. You all right? Relax. It's time to clean house. The thrill was in. Sergeant Lee Suddenly, a warning. The creature screeched, ready to rain hellfire down upon the squad. Shoot it down, Lee. But before Kim was already airborne, gravity seemed to have. With the Alpha dead, the squad scrambled. The hum of the generator kicked in, erecting a shimmering force field round the oil reservoir. Silence returned. A high-ranking officer approached. He offered praise, but his eyes were cold. Good work. But tell me, how did these things bypass our radar? He wrinkled his. Lee reported 30 confirmed kills. The timing was suspicious. The commander was away, leaving a gaping hole in their defense. Lee gritted his. The arrogance radiating from the captain was palpable. He tried to blame Lee for the mess, but the sergeant stood his ground. Then explain the burns, the captain demanded. Who here has the skill to wield an electric tonfa like a master? Lee didn't hesitate. The captain scoffed. The next morning, the commander's. Your combat data makes no sense, the commander noted bluntly. Are you a regressor? Someone who came back from the future? Kim simply shook his head. The commander sighed. Lucky. Kim. The Hunter Corps was an anomaly. For battalions, elite status. A breed apart from the regular military. Kim listened. Every soul in this corps is an awakened, Lee revealed. But not everyone is fit for the front lines. Intelligence. Even the pencil pushed, and that was the preamble. He expected a reward, but the lecture was just a heavy V, a massive figure. The entire pride swelled in their chests at hosting such a combat deity. The Titan, having heard of yesterday's chaos, nodded in approval at their survival. Our protagonist watched from the ranks, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't struck by awe, but by calculation. Just how strong was this bearded legend? The Titan zeroed as Kim gripped it. Formalities over. He cut straight to business. The Titan narrowed his. Fix it. The Titan turned back to Kim. Kim feigned a humble apology. Under the bearded man, his expression turned. Standing before the high command, he declared our boy a hero. Then came the real reward. He handed Kim an insignia. A promotion, bypassing years of bureaucratic red tape. In this world, results matter more than rank. Give the boy a break, the Titan ordered the commander. He's earned a vacation. Kim's eyes lit up. A promotion was nice, but freedom, that was priceless. Walking the corridors, he realized military life wasn't a prison, it was a playground. He beamed, his mind already drifting to the outside world. His squadmate slapped his back, buzzing with excitement over the promotion and the battle. Kim accepted the praise with a nod. This was his first taste of the outside world since enlistment. So, his friend asked, what's the plan? Kim had only one objective. He didn't hesitate. I need a terminal. His home was in a blackout zone, useless for his needs. He needed to game. He planned to lock himself in an internet cafe and grind until his eyes bled. Not a single second would be wasted. But fate had other plans. Outside the shop, he spotted two civilians in a heated argument. An old-timer was complaining about military blockades. He wanted to forage for mushrooms in a restricted zone, claiming he had permission from the mountain owner. His friend looked at him like he was crazy. You're looking for a death wish. That mountain is crawling with danger. The old man was stubborn. If I wear a mask, they won't know. Which mountain? Kim interrupted, looming over them. The civilians jumped, startled by the soldier. But it seemed our boy was about to offer a trade. Moments later, Kim thanked them for the lift. The civilians stopped the car, fearful. We can't go further. The soldiers will arrest us. They looked at Kim. Can you really fix the mountain problem? Kim smirked, stepping out. Consider the restriction lifted by tomorrow morning. No problem. The driver squinted at Kim's low-rank insignia. They didn't buy it, but they wished him luck anyway. It sounded more like a funeral prayer. Standing at the base, Kim inhaled. The air was thick with a demonic energy. His smile widened. This was better than any video game. The scent was nostalgic. It was time to power level. Up ahead, Soldiers in gas masks guarded the perimeter. Kim moved like a shadow. Infiltration was child's play. The security here was laughable. But he couldn't leave witnesses. He channeled a wave of dark mana, aiming straight for the guards' stomachs. A biological attack. Panic struck their faces, a desperate, rumbling emergency. No grown man could withstand that kind of pressure. Abandoning their posts, the guards scrambled into the bushes. The path was wide open. Kim slipped into the cavern mouth instantly. Silence returned to the mountain. He expected a horde. He expected a boss fight, but the cave was empty. Yet, the demonic energy here was suffocatingly dense. If there were no monsters, then what exactly was leaking this terrifying power? Silence was his only answer, but he didn't need words. Kim began to devour every scrap of ambient energy in the zone. The system roared to life, numbers climbing steadily as his power spiked. A thrill shot through him. This was exactly what he needed. With the influx of demonic energy, his corruption mastery leveled up instantly. But that wasn't all. The legendary Nightwalker skill was finally unlocked. Seeing that notification pop up, pure exhilaration coursed through him. This was a game changer. Beyond just raw stats, Kim had reclaimed a piece of his past. One of his signature abilities from the other world had returned to his arsenal. The Shadow Walker, a terrifying construct woven from pure darkness. A skill he had mastered long ago. Eager to see his old ally, he commanded the shadows to manifest. He braced himself for a towering giant, a monster to strike fear into his enemies. But reality had a cruel twist in store. What materialized wasn't a beast, but a tiny, pathetic blob that struggled to climb a single stair. Kim stared in disbelief, his disappointment immeasurable. Was this some sort of cosmic punishment for leaving the other dimension? Or was his current demonic energy just too weak to fuel a real monster? The little guy looked useless, shivering under the harsh sunlight. But as Kim watched, the gears in his mind began to turn. Size didn't matter for espionage. If this thing could merge with the shadows, it would be the ultimate spy. Vacation over, Kim returned to the battalion, walking straight into a hero's welcome. His squad mates swarmed him, hyping up the recruit who snagged a promotion in record time. Amidst the cheers and backslapping, Kim spotted a familiar face. He had a little something prepared. Reaching into his bag, he tossed a small, unassuming package to his friend. It was high-quality moisturizer, a holy grail item in the rough military life. He knew his friend obsessed over skincare, and out here, this was pure gold. Watching the bromance unfold, Roberval chimed in with his usual sour attitude. He scoffed, claiming Kim hadn't even been gone long enough to be missed. But greed outweighed his pride. He immediately demanded to know if Kim had brought the special magazine he asked for. Roberval was expecting adult entertainment, but Kim handed him a few packets of cheap instant coffee instead. The look on his face was priceless. But the jokes ended when fresh intel dropped. The advanced exam was coming up, and miraculously, Kim's name was already on the roster. A wave of shock went through the barracks. A rookie taking the advanced test? It was unheard of for someone with his short service time. Whispers of favoritism. Kim decided to click. He calmly lay. It all clicked. It was a gamble. While others were impressed, a recruit dropped a warning. The soldiers filed. Kim paused. Special weapons training. That was news to him. He was going in blind. The sun rose on the training grounds. The sergeant stood before them, his voice booming as he laid out the rules of engagement. Veterans were told to read. Paper tests were. Kim didn't just want to. He realized the platoon stood rigid in formation. The sergeant barked the order, secure your melee weapons. There was a catch. Rookies were restricted to swords, while the ranked corporals had their pick of the armory. The sergeant began demonstrating the local sword style. But he warned them, mindless imitation was a death sentence. The form was merely his words. The sergeant roared for. Kim watched the rotational force, the precision. Now he understood why they called this special training. It was art, relying only on. While other recruits stumbled like drunkards, Kim felt right at home. His experience in the other world gave him a rhythm they couldn't comprehend. He realized the military. Every strike was the sergeant's voice. Kim had no idea why. The sergeant looked at his platoon. For every motion the recruits watched in awe. He finally caught a moment, but he hadn't come to. Clutching the pack of candy, Kim couldn't help but wonder. Did this hard-nosed sergeant always keep sweets stashed in his tactical gear? The surprises weren't over yet. Another recruit approached, eyes full of admiration, begging to learn even a fraction of the protagonist's god-tier skills. Kim frantically shoved the candy into his pocket, caught off guard. He hadn't expected a disciple to show up so soon. The recruit confessed his struggle. He was a master of the blade in theory, yet helpless when it came to adapting his style for monster hunting. Seeing the burning sincerity in his eyes, Kim agreed to train him until he dropped. While savoring the sugar rush, he dissected the warrior's stance with a master's gaze. It was the textbook Hunter Battalion style, but Dong Jin's problem wasn't his swordplay. It was a fatal flaw deep inside. It was something far more. Luckily, our protagonist held a PhD in survival. When it came to mental fortitude, he was in a league of his own. A twisted excitement. Finally, while some recruits wasted candidates for the special exam, he realized his path to a well-deserved promotion was finally open. His platoon was already locked and loaded, standing in formation. Looming before them, his voice grated like sandpaper as he demanded absolute obedience. He wasted no time, forcing them to introduce themselves under his icy glare. The battalion marched toward the transport bus, their destination, the battlefield where their futures would be decided. The test would take place on the air was thick with, but Kim's ears perked up at the rumors circulating. The 4th Battalion was joining the fray. A wave of excitement. One recruit was, the poor fool didn't realize the journey they were corralled into. The lieutenant tossed up. Everyone else was cleared for the practical exam. Sad but true, there was no room for betas in this world. It baffled the mind. The test was designed to filter out illiterates, yet somehow he managed to fail the unfailable. Kim kept his eyes on the prize, ignoring the drama. But from the shadows of the hallway, a woman's gaze locked onto him. It was the mysterious girl from before. She alone knew the monster hiding beneath his skin, having witnessed his power firsthand. The high-ranking officer, they weren't just looking for soldiers worthy of a rank up. They were looking for entertainment. Our protagonist was losing patience. He didn't come here to listen to NPC dialogue. He came to dominate the field. The colonel dropped. One was our boy. The crowd buzzed with tension. A veteran fighter realized the implications. Special rules applied for elite scorers aiming for the hellish front lines. Last year, it confirmed the rule. Every eye scanned the rule. The azure-haired beauty acts. Finally, Colonel Mustache wraps up his endless nonsense speech. He tells everyone, just when we thought it was over. First up is the trial of raw power. The concept is simple. Candidates must push the examiner standing before them. A massive wall of muscle affectionately known as the mountain soldier. But a memory flash. Apparently, these they will be graded on a scale. Music the role. This guy has eyes wide enough to see the future. Judging by his jitters, he definitely enjoys a little party powder before breakfast. If you catch my drift. Wasting no time, the powder enthusiast pushes with everything he has. If he strains any harder, his hemorrhoids are going to explode right along with his ego. However, the mountain soldier is not a fan of this intimate contact. Music. He flares his physical. Anyone who fails to, one by one, they try to move the human fortress. Some manage to make him stumble back a step, but total failure is the trend of the day. The examiner's patience is wearing thin. He expected warriors, but all he sees are useless recruits. Music. Finally, the blue-haired girl is called to the stage, stunning the crowd of extras. With graceful ease, it turns out now everything makes sense. Monstrous power must run in her bloodline. Ignoring the gossip, the blue-haired, he walks calmly to, his goal isn't just to pass music, he barely taps the entire, the mountain soldier while the examiner is thrilled to see such talent. The mountain soldier takes this humiliation personally. In front of everyone, he didn't get a notification. The recruits are learning it is time to test. This is no place for the weak. Music they drag out of the recruits can't believe they have to dodge actual gunfire. But with a sadistic smile, the captain tells them to relax. They are only. Our protagonist finds this fascinating. The machine before them is a piece of state-of-the-art technology. A perfect score requires surviving for 1 full minute in front of that mechanical beast. The candidate must stay strictly within the designated circle. Although it tests agility, those confident in their iron skin can simply stand there and tank the hits for a minute. That is a valid strike. It is time to put their lives on the line. Music. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out the protagonist's name. He glances as our boy's friend, but there is a problem. He cannot rely on his. The first recruit didn't just fail, he got obliterated. One shot to the face, and the poor guy was down for the count. That brutal impact. Kim realized the grim reality. A massive portion of candidates are washing out of the first round. The pass rate is abysmal, but frankly, this difficulty is necessary. The front lines against the monsters aren't for the weak. Recruits are being eliminated left and right. The captain sneered. It is finally time for the azure-haired prodigy to unleash her full potential. As the rubber projects, those balls are traveling at the speed of light, yet they couldn't even graze her uniform. Her physical prowess left the gallery stunned. As soon as she finished the test, music. The captain told the extras to take notes. This was the standard they needed to reach. That girl secured the first perfect score of the day, returning to her spot radiating cool confidence. However, her focus wasn't on her victory. She locked eyes with the protagonist, silently daring him to match her level. The extras noticed the intense gaze. Since their brains barely functioned past a 5th grade level, they assumed it was a secret romance. But our protagonist has absolutely no clue what this woman wants. Now, it is time for the protagonist to shock the world. As he stepped up, he could feel the blue-haired woman watching his every move. Her stare was so fixed that our boy actually started to feel awkward. He wondered if she was just fishing for a compliment on her perfect score. Suddenly, the rubber bullet machine roared to life. The first shot fired, but it hit nothing but air. The blue-haired girl's eyes widened in genuine shock. Our boy, however, the other recruits felt he weaved while dancing through the day. The captain was left speechless. A heavy silence suffocated the entire gym. After a display of godlike agility, continuing the test felt almost pointless. The few who managed to survive the culling were marched outside. Standing before a looming dimensional portal, the captain was still flustered, unable to process the protagonist's impossible reflexes. But he pulled it together to announce the final phase, the entrance test. It sounded deceptively simple. Survive the dungeon. After a 40-minute trek, they stood in the gloom of the interior. The objective was clear: reach the other side, get a stamp from the examiner, and make it back alive. The catch: no one was told the distance. Confusion rippled through the group. Music. Kim noticed the other candidates were paralyzed by caution. Our boy, however, was calculating how to speedrun this entire ordeal. But before he could launch, the blue-haired girl slammed her shoulder into him. A deliberate provocation. She even glanced back with icy indifference. Determined to prove her superiority, the girl took off like a bullet, running as if her life depended on it. What she didn't know was that this petty gesture had poked the bear. The protagonist, music, felt the competitive fire ignite. Determined to remain the apex predator, Kim exploded off the line, leaving the extras eating his dust. She had a head start, but against Kim, distance is irrelevant. Her lead didn't last long. In seconds, the protagonist was running right beside her. He casually tossed a remark her way, saying there wasn't much she could do now. She looked confused, so Kim claimed he was just muttering to himself. But the truth was, he couldn't resist crushing her pride. Our boy shifted gears, accelerating with such insane speed that he completely shattered the blue-haired girl's motivation. She was forced to stop to catch her breath, watching his figure shrink into the horizon. The defeat triggered a memory. She recalled the day she arrived for her tour of duty. The unit was buzzing with rumors about her. A general's daughter and a natural genius. The warm reception made the shy girl feel overwhelmed. Everyone expected her to be a spoiled princess, but beneath the accolades, she was far from arrogant. Seeing her humility, the squad realized she wasn't riding on nepotism. She was a dedicated warrior who would breeze through training. But her world shifted when she witnessed our protagonist's raw strength. She became obsessed with understanding this unknown monster. From that moment, she pushed herself past every limit, leading her team to victory in every competition just to catch up to him. Right after that championship, the supervisor handed them something. A mere few minutes of respite was all they got before the blue-haired girl's squad was forced back into formation. They had managed to shatter the training center's record, earning them a well-deserved break for the rest of the day. Among the recruits, the consensus was absolute. They had only achieved this legendary feat thanks to the blue-haired ace's sheer dominance. Hearing the whispers of admiration, her confidence began to soar. Inside the barracks, the atmosphere was peaceful as the girls changed out of their gear. But that peace was instantly destroyed. A soldier burst in, buzzing with adrenaline. Their brand new capture the flag record had just been obliterated. To make matters worse, the new time was 1 minute and 2 seconds, a number that should have been physically impossible. And the monster responsible for this anomaly was a citizen named Kim. The moment that name hit her ears, the blue-haired girl froze. She knew that name. Slowly, the protagonist's legend began to spread like wildfire. He wasn't just competing, he was annihilating every single training record on the board. Every time the blue-haired girl tried to train, her gossip-loving teammate would update the platoon on his latest feats. She was getting sick of living in his shadow. Day after day, she heard new tales of the protagonist's glory, but deep down, a fire burned. She wanted to be the one the world whispered about. That night, as sleep took her, she drifted into an old memory of her father, a man who had dedicated his life to the army. The little girl watched with wide eyes as her hero prepared to leave. He said goodbye with overwhelming affection, leaving his daughter behind because Korea needed him. Her life's mission was clear. She would become stronger, transcending her limits just as her father once had. Eventually, the day came. She was recruited, and the colonel in charge revealed he had been her father's direct subordinate. The blue-haired girl thanked him for the honor shown to her family legacy. With her perfect evaluation score, she had the right to choose any post she desired. The colonel even suggested the prestigious 107th Division, the very unit where her father had served. But the girl already had a target in mind, our protagonist. She demanded to know where that citizen had been assigned. It was then she remembered her resolve. She wasn't here to succumb to petty, childish rivalries. Even though she had provoked our protagonist earlier, she realized she had just gotten carried away in the heat of the moment. Now, she understood the source of his fierce competitiveness. But the bitterest pill to swallow was the confusion in her heart. Remembering that day, she couldn't tell if what she felt was hatred or pure envy. She decided it was time to be the bigger person and apologize. Her goal was absolute strength, not fleeting fame, and she was determined to achieve it without riding on her father's coattails. If she found a warrior superior to her, she needed to learn from them, not resent them. She refused to give in to her own immaturity. Finally, she reached the checkpoint to receive her stamp from the supervisor. The man had just told the protagonist to return to base immediately because his time was god tier. Our boy casually flashed the stamp he had already received to his fierce competitor. As he brushed past her, he dropped the ultimate insult. He revealed that he had almost fallen asleep just waiting for her to finally arrive. That comment snapped something inside her. The blue-haired girl's rage exploded. Full of chaotic energy, she demanded her stamp right now. The apology was officially off the table. She didn't just want to beat him, she needed to humiliate him. Meanwhile, a few other soldiers managed to stagger through the portal. Every single one of them was gasping for air, completely spent. Only the protagonist stood there with calm breathing, the record firmly in his grasp. With swelling pride, the captain announced that Kim had clocked in at 29 minutes flat. Trailing behind him was the blue-haired girl with a time of 32 minutes. The captain was ecstatic to have recruits with such perfect evaluations. It was time for the recruits to gather for a meal to refuel. The evaluation was far from over. As the blue-haired girl bent down to retrieve her jacket, her eyes locked with the protagonists once again. Proving they were both incredibly immature, Kim stuck his tongue out at her. Then he strolled away as if he hadn't just started a war. The blue-haired girl just stared, stunned. She realized she had provoked someone even more childish than herself. A smile tugged at her lips, even though she had started the trash talk. She was the one paying the price for it. There was nothing left to do but accept it. Throwing her uniform back on, she decided to focus. Finally, the second phase of the special exam was about to begin. But this was no drill. Several creatures were charging toward the recruits. Violent, dangerous goblins were out for blood. A young man gripping a sword looked exhausted, but the killing intent in his eyes was sharp. He was ready to slaughter his enemies. One of the monsters charged at him with berserk fury. The recruit focused entirely on the threat, only to be blindsided by another goblin flanking from the rear. He had a split second to react. Blocking the first strike, he launched a devastating kick directly into his enemy's gallbladder. But the second creature was already winding up, ready to crush him from behind with a massive club. Disaster was averted by a hair's breadth. The recruit swung his blade with lethal precision, landing a near-fatal cut on the ambush monster. The crushing weight of the atmosphere squeezed cold sweat from the recruit's pores. Facing him was a monstrosity driven by pure bloodlust, eyes wide with manic energy. These beasts were far from finished. Kim observed every twitch with a critical eye, dissecting the battlefield. The second phase? It was laughably easier than he anticipated. The objective was simple: prove to the brass that the sword was an extension of their very souls. Mastery of the fundamentals was the key, and among the hopefuls, Dongjin stood out like a diamond in the rough. His blade work surpassed the average recruit, earning a rare nod of pride from the captain. Poor Dongjin withered under the praise, face burning with modesty. But theory and reality are two different worlds. In the crucible of actual combat, his lack of blood experience began to show. The horde advanced, promising nothing but agony and ruin. This was the final test: kill or be killed by living, breathing nightmares. Dongjin's target was 3 goblins. Music, but the clock was ticking, and he had only managed to put one in the grave. He scrambled to take down a second, but the final goblin loomed over him, a wall of snarling muscle. In a flash of steel, he performed impromptu surgery. Dongjin dissected the beast with surgical precision. Sadly, the captain frowned. Music. Kim watched with sharp disappointment. It was a lack of. Kim noticed the gloom. This wasn't just a test, it was his ascension. One step closer, music to the ultimate dream that lay beyond. The gallery watched and if these goblins were named, it seemed like a hand. Facing him were 3 hulking behemoths. But to Kim, they were just bags of meat waiting for a massive injection of kinetic energy. The monsters lunged. He moved with the bat tore through oblivion. The examiners stared, jaws on the floor. They were witnessing a monster in human skin, a prodigy commanding a flawless score. The blue-haired, standing amidst he had revealed the as the sun set, especially the ascent was the officer stammered, even the battalion. His squad erupted as they loaded onto the transport. Kim glanced back. There was one recruit he wasn't finished with yet. Dongjin, special training. The blue-haired, her gaze was intense, piercing, but Kim's eyes darted to her insignia. She had remained stagnant, no promotion for the ace. She had fought with, standing in the silence hung between them. It seems the genius, but just as Kim pressed his face, the threat struck. She turned her back on the nosy recruit. The sexual tension, that was the truth. They refused to. The squad turned. Kim shut. He has zero interest. With absolute our protagonist revealed. Even I felt that letdown. A 2D girl. Seriously. The rest of the trip passed in awkward silence. By nightfall, the mood shifted. Mountains of fried chicken vanished as the recruits celebrated their survival on this legendary day. Lieutenant Lee had everyone showered our protagonist with gratitude. Without his carry, they wouldn't be tasting this golden grease right now. The red-headed extra. The words sent Kim deep into thought, until the heavy footsteps of authority interrupted the party. Carrying crates of beer, the officer barked. Lee announced, and thanks to the god-tier performance of one specific soldier in the advanced exam, a special reward had been authorized. The redhead's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. Is that actual beer? His drinking buddy looked ready to kill for a sip of that fermented nectar. But Lee crushed there, not a drop for the lackey. After the chaotic ensuring no dark energy swirled. It was undeniably ugly, a disappointment to the aesthetic. But Kim had devised the perfect use for this little monster. He doesn't need a slayer right now. He needs a spy. This thing is perfect for gathering high-level intel unnoticed. Noticing the mission is any unusual act. The shadow dwarf recharged. Kim warned, seeing the dark creatures. Our boy he played it cool, claiming he hasn't had a beer in ages and needed fresh air to clear his head. Lieutenant Lee smirked. He could chug Lee. Lee used the moment. Kim accepted the don't stay out, but as the officer, the more he observed Lee. By the next day, the commander had written off this platoon as a lost cause, a gathering of hopeless wretches. But hidden within the filth, he had found a diamond. Corporal Kim shattered every record in the book, obliterating the creatures in a mere for seconds. Now the commander, and let's not forget, he was the lone wolf who wiped out the infestation at the oil reserve. Reports confirmed he was his trajectory. It is only a matter of time before the Hunter Corporation takes notice, and powerful eyes turn toward our boy. Stunned, the commander didn't hesitate. In a lifetime of watching hunters, true legends were rare. Colonel Mustache was one of them. And Kim, he belonged in that same pantheon. Meanwhile, a lone soldier stood amidst the scorching desert sands. Facing him was a nightmare legion. Vile lizard, the horde surrounded him. It was time to play ball. The next morning brought up, fresh from a shower. Our boy shrugged coolly. There is no secret. He simply walked in, fresh from a workout and radiating energy. Just like the protagonist, he was in peak condition, maybe even better after a sweat session. Kim had to admit, the guy was a machine. A true model soldier who had already crushed a morning routine while others suffered. Lee asked if Kim had checked out the base's gym, but our boy admitted he hadn't found the time. You are a corporal now, Lee reminded him. The facility is yours to use as you please. Before leaving, Lee dropped a final tip. The virtual reality gear is top tier. You should try it. That sentence lit a fire in Kim's brain. The moment had arrived to unlock the holy grail of training. Kim marched straight to the academy, expectations sky high. He stepped into the room, and the tech did not disappoint. The setup was state-of-the-art. Kim's fingers flew across the console, questioning the interface as he prepared his playground. The menu offered a buffet of violence. Kim selected orcs without hesitation. Now for the quantity. Overflowing with confidence, he didn't want a duel. He wanted a war. He demanded the system spawn the maximum enemy count. The computer flashed a warning. Maximum simulation capacity 30 units. His true motivation, to see if this high-tech simulation felt just like a video game. Realizing he could select his own weapon, his excitement spiked. Parameters locked. Synchronization complete. It was time to dive in. The world dissolved, replaced by the heat of a virtual desert. Kim stood ready, weapon in hand. He scanned the horizon as his victims materialized from digital dust, one by one. As the horde charged, curiosity turned to adrenaline. The graphics were insane. The simulator was a masterpiece. Kim swung with pure, unadulterated joy. The impact shuddered up his arms' perfect feedback. He had never felt this alive. The virtual beasts roared in fury, but their rage only made the slaughter sweeter. The realism was intoxicating. Our protagonist didn't just want to win, he wanted to eradicate them, leaving nothing but a trail of bodies. The first session ended in a flash. Kim had annihilated every target, but 30 foes, that was just a warm-up. Then he noticed the custom settings. Why stop at one type? He selected 30 of asterisk every single species asterisk. The air shimmered as a massive army began to spawn. Now our soldier was ready to deliver a world of pain. The simulation had transformed into a true hunt. A tide of nightmares rolled toward him. A smile spread across his face. He didn't have to choose. He could smash them all at once. The lizard men led the charge, a vanguard of death, with a legion of monsters close behind. Our protagonist stood ready to introduce every single one of them to the nails at the tip of his bat, because the only true monster trapped in this room was him. Kim shattered the first creature's skull with a vicious swing, unleashing all the violence he had kept locked away in the depths of his soul. He tore through their ranks like a hurricane of steel, breaking bones, shattering teeth, and reaping lives without mercy. No simulation could hope to stand against this force of nature. Blows rained down like judgment from the heavens. Never in the history of mankind had a simple baseball bat been wielded with such devastating efficiency. Kim was painting a masterpiece of destruction, showcasing the full terrifying breadth of his arsenal. Surrounded by a sea of digital corpses, he finally brought the simulation to a close. A satisfied smirk played on Kim's lips as the virtual reality faded away. That last session hit the spot perfectly. Glancing at the worn-out gear, Kim couldn't deny the rush. The thrill of the hunt was intoxicating. Outside of his favorite game, this bloodbath was the most fun he'd had in ages. But just then, the air shimmered as a mysterious system message materialized. Baseball bat mastery acquired. His proficiency with the weapon had leveled up in an instant. A lucky break for our hero, and a nightmare for his enemies. He paused, stunned. He never imagined a virtual simulation could trigger real-world skill. Evolution. This changed everything. He didn't need to risk his life in dungeons to grind for experience anymore. Satisfied with his discovery, Kim decided to return later to master every weapon in the armory. But as he turned to leave, fate threw a familiar face in his path. Dong Min was frozen right outside the door. Our boy raised an eyebrow, asking what exactly he was doing lurking there. The poor guy was speechless, a trembling finger pointing at the simulation screen. Kim tried to play it cool, but then he saw what had terrified his friend. The final score was on display. 120 enemies, slaughtered in a single run. Kim felt a cold sweat. This kind of record would draw too much attention. Dong Min stammered, asking if the protagonist was really the monster who cleared that stage. Desperate to cover his tracks, gears turned in Kim's mind. Suddenly, brilliance struck. With eyes burning with intense determination, Kim grabbed him. "We need to have a serious conversation, Dong Min." The poor sidekick didn't stand a chance. Kim dragged him toward the gym, declaring that their true training from hell started right now. Dong Min tried to beg for mercy, claiming a brutal hangover. But our protagonist turned a deaf ear, promising that sweating it out was the ultimate cure. The gym door slammed shut, sealing their fate. Meanwhile, outside the simulation room, a pair of eyes caught sight of the protagonist's impossible record. The numbers mocked him. Roberval stood frozen, jealousy gnawing at his gut as he realized just how inferior he truly was. Time slipped by as winter tightened its grip. Snow began to fall as Roberval entered the barracks, finding his squadmates laughing in a huddle. He forced a casual demeanor and approached the group. He asked an extra where everyone was hiding, and specifically, where our protagonist had disappeared to. The soldier reported that the platoon was out on snow-clearing duty. As for the protagonist, he was locked in the gym, grinding until the daily routine kicked off. But then, this poor extra made a fatal slip of the tongue. He referred to the protagonist as Corporal right to Roberval's face. A dangerous mistake, knowing how fragile Roberval's ego truly was. Roberval swallowed his rage and left a sharp order. "Tell the protagonist the commander is looking for him now." The extra scrambled to obey, terrified that Roberval's mood might swing from bad to violent. Turning his attention to the other recruits, Roberval demanded to know what mischief they were up to. On the table lay a crumpled piece of paper covered in scribbles. They grinned, asking if Roberval wanted in on the action. It was a betting pool on how fast the protagonist would make sergeant. The pot? A full month's salary. Roberval stared at the notes, his voice dripping with disdain. "Why waste your money on this?" One recruit laughed, mocking a buddy who bet on a 6-month timeline. "Impossible," he scoffed. But the long-haired soldier defended his choice. "The guy is a legend," he argued. All the while, Roberval scanned the bets with cold eyes. The extras bickered back and forth, desperate not to lose their hard-earned cash on a bad gamble. Suddenly, Roberval silenced them all. "I'm in." The room went quiet. The long-haired recruit's jaw dropped when he saw where Roberval placed his money. There was no backing out of a wager this crazy. Roberval ignored their shocked expressions, his face unreadable. The man was unhinged. Roberval had bet that the protagonist would be promoted in just one single month. Back inside the academy gym, heavy metal clashed against silence. There were weights made of red ore gear that usually required strict supervision. But our protagonist handled the dense metal as if it were styrofoam. He racked the bar across his shoulders. The rest was just a display of raw, unadulterated power as he curled weight that would crush a normal man. Workout complete, he let the weights crash to the floor, but a frown creased his brow. Despite days of intense grinding, his stats hadn't budged an inch. Music in the other world, survival was a simple game of numbers. Our boy Kim craves skills that scale with his stats, dreaming of a returned hero's godlike might. Starting from zero is a drag, but suddenly, a golden glow flashes before his eyes. The status window flickers to life. His strength has surged by 5 points, finally hitting E- rank. It is a humble start, but he knows hard work will turn these numbers into legends. Music, a messenger sent by Commander Rubberville, finally tracks him down. The messenger says the old man is waiting. But Kim's eyes shine with the manic joy of a gamer unlocking a new skill. Music, the poor soldier stands there, bewildered. He just watches in confusion, thinking everyone in this unit has lost their minds. Kim reports to the colonel's office, answering the summons. An officer steps forward to receive our rising star. He plays it cool, but there is urgent business to discuss. First, he congratulates the protagonist on surviving his first week as a corporal. That officer, this promotion is all thanks to the bad incident. A crisis solved single-handedly by our protagonist. The officer is eternally grateful. He hands over a personal gift from the commander for the bad extermination and his flawless promotion exam scores. It is a simple piece of paper, but it carries the weight of glory. This commendation will be permanently etched onto his record. Kim's eyes sharpen. He does not care about honor. Our protagonist, unfazed. Kim, days later, their mission, if they follow training, the captain guarantees a zero-casualty run. But as the briefing ends and a supply box opens, the mood plummets. Soldiers look, it is a kingdom, the battalion. Music, this sewer dungeon is a high-hazard zone. Over 100 enemies lurk in the darkness. The point man, the tunnels are too tight for firearms to be effective. It is a tactical nightmare requiring extreme caution. A soldier suggests, the stench is so, a soldier, it is hard to fight since Ratman feet. Slowly, he approaches a massive pool of sludge filled with debris. But as he peers closer, music, terror grips his heart. The pit is overflowing with bones, far more than there should be. Upon closure, before he can form the platoon, but the adrenaline junkies are already placing bets. Loser buys lunch based on the kill count. The commander, finally, the vermin erupt from the shadows. Furious, disease-ridden beasts charge the line. Hold your ground. Fear is not an option. He is grinning like, these soldiers are elite. Music, the rat, 3 vermin lunge, yet his base, amidst the sergeant and lieutenant. Still, Dongjin displays the protagonist. While our boy celebrates internally, the radio crackles. The battalion leader screams for reinforcements at his position. Music, Robertville, a massive squads 2 and the slaughter continues. A chill run. The gas mask had dulled his senses. Realizing he detected the scent too late, anxiety begins to claw at his chest. Beneath the soul, desperate, music, it's too late. The earth explodes, leaving the entire battalion paralyzed in shock. Music. Standing it towers over this abomination. A soldier hits he grips his sword. His superior, the rat lunge. The poor man throws his hands up, a desperate, futile shield against death. Steel flashes at music. Lee bought them time. Finally, our protagonist steps into the fray, shield raised high. The hellish rat ignores him, fixated only on its easy prey. Big mistake. He studies Kim slams his shield into the rat's skull. The impact confirms it. This thing has been completely consumed by corruption. That brutal impact buys the other soldiers a precious few moments to breathe. The protagonist realizing recruits fall back, elites engage. As the formation shifts, the monster shakes off the stun. With a roar, the creatures rop for the soldier. He waits for the claw exploding with he doesn't stop. The rat reel. Kim unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes. His fists moving so fast they became a blur of pure violence. He only now came the real prime. A holographic it was a meager. Kim vowed to put this. The operation was officially concluded. Soldiers slumped in relief, while the gamblers among them tallied their wins with wide grins. Unfortunately for a superior officer, he clarified that, speaking of the hero, while the squad leaders, but beneath the smoke, the long-haired soldier admitted he froze in sheer terror against the beast. Kim shrugged it off, claiming his body just moved on instinct before his brain could catch up. But the soldier shook his head. Crisis moments didn't build character, they revealed it. Because Kim didn't hesitate, Dongjin and the sergeant were still drawing breath right now. Recognizing the heavy toll of the fight, the soldier asked if Kim was all right. A simple smile was his only answer until a shadow loomed over them. The superior officer stepped in, his eyes scanning Kim for any sign of critical damage. Kim stood tall, reporting with absolute confidence that he was in peak condition. The captain sighed, relief warring with suspicion. He ordered a debriefing back at base. Kim didn't know the reason for the scrutiny, but he nodded in compliance. Watching from the side, The long-haired soldier noted the dark cloud hanging over the platoon. "Commander." Nearby, the sergeant was locked in a tense exchange over the radio, likely attempting damage control. He reported to the commander that casualties were minimal. Against all odds, even Dongjin was unhurt. They had stared death in the face and blinked last. The weight on the commander's shoulders finally lifted. No one had died on his watch. But the mission wasn't over. The sergeant rallied the crew, barking that despite the anomaly, they still had a dungeon to clear. Soldiers scrambled to check their gear. It was time to pack up and head home. Back at headquarters, the interrogation began. The captain demanded a play-by-play of the battle. The report needed details, and he wanted the truth. Kim hesitated. How much of his power should he reveal? He explained that after his shield failed, he resorted to blunt force, just fists against fangs. He knew how ridiculous it sounded aloud. The captain narrowed his eyes. He admitted his view had been blocked during the chaos, but he had to ask the impossible question. Did Kim really pulp a monster with nothing but his bare knuckles? The proof was etched into Kim's skin. His knuckles were raw, stained with the undeniable evidence of his brutality. Kim kept it simple. The beast was relentless. He didn't have the luxury of strategy. He just fought to survive. Curiosity piquing, the captain demanded to know his stats. Kim didn't flinch. Strength 65. Agility 60. The room went silent. The captain himself barely scraped past 40. Yet this private standing before him, he was a monster in human skin. Those numbers weren't just high, they were double the average for a sergeant. With that kind of power, the captain murmured, "You belong in the Hunter Military Academy." Not the infantry, but the file on his desk told a different story. Kim was a dropout, a fact that had barred him from the officer track until now. Seeing wasted potential, the captain offered a lifeline. If Kim wanted the rank he deserved, he just needed to pass the university entrance exams. He even offered to fast-track the paperwork once Kim made sergeant. It was a golden ticket. But Kim shot it down immediately. He was a warrior, not a scholar. "I don't do books, sir." The blunt honesty caught the captain off guard. Realizing the boy was serious, the captain didn't push. The offer would stand, however, should Kim ever tire of the grunt life. He dismissed Kim to the barracks, but his eyes lingered. He wouldn't forget the soldier who punched a monster to death. As Kim turned to leave, the captain's gaze drifted to the soldier's cap. The insignia there seemed far too small for the power it concealed. Just as Kim reached for the door handle, the captain's voice stopped him cold. "Wait." The captain admitted it freely. The recruit hadn't just fought. He had pulled his comrades back from the brink of death. Without him, the mission would have been a total massacre. Sincerity drips from the captain's voice as he thanks Kim. But our protagonist remains ice cold, claiming he only did what was necessary. The captain's admiration only deepens at such humility. Striding down the hall, Kim knows he wasn't lying. He didn't act out of heroism. He needed that demonic energy to fuel his own ascension. Every kill brings him closer to his true goal. But just as plans seem to settle, a massive inconvenience blocks his path. Someone is demanding to join the secret training sessions. It isn't an ally or a friend. To everyone's shock, it is Roberval, the battalion's biggest bully. The audacity is staggering. The one begging to become a student is the same jerk who has made life a living hell for everyone else. Kim's eyes narrow. How did this guy sniff out their covert meetings? And why is he desperate to train when his body is still battered and broken from the last raid? The truth comes out. Roberval saw everything in the dungeon. He watched Dongjin, a guy he considered trash, fight like a warrior. He knows the training is the secret, and he wants that power for himself. Greed burns in his eyes. He is willing to do anything to join the group and surpass his limits. Kim isn't impressed. In fact, the demand feels like an insult. He steps forward, aura flaring, and asks if Roberval thinks admission is free. Around here, you have to pay respect before you pay with sweat. Roberval isn't stupid. He understands the assignment immediately. He drops his pride and bows. Humbly, he thanks the protagonist for saving his life and apologizes to Dongjin for being a complete scumbag all this time. He admits he doesn't deserve mercy, but his hunger for strength is real. He pleads for a chance to train. Dongjin, with his heart of gold, immediately looks to Kim for approval. But the protagonist isn't swayed by a sob story. His gaze remains hard as steel. Kim shakes his head. It is a no. He tells recruit Dongjin that this doesn't sit right. Roberval feels the crushing weight of his own karma. He knows he brought this rejection on himself. Yet he still feels a flicker of gratitude that they even listened. Shoulders slumped, the bully turns to leave in total defeat. But just before he vanishes, Kim offers a lifeline. Pigeon, that was the word. Roberval freezes. The terms? Act like a bird for the next 24 hours, and maybe, just maybe, Kim will reconsider his application. Rage flares in Roberval's eyes. It is humiliating, but the desire for power wins. He suppresses the hate and lets out a soft coo. Just like a pigeon, Dongjin's jaw hits the floor. He cannot believe this is reality. While the protagonist stifles a laugh, a legend is born. The era of the pigeon man has begun. Meanwhile, under the pale light of a full moon, a sinister plot unfolds. A heavy cart rattles toward a massive castle, guided by the protagonist's former instructor. He presents his cargo to a woman radiating dangerous authority. The instructor remains silent, waiting for her judgment. She offers no warmth, only a chilling stare. The instructor breaks the silence, asking how long she plans to continue this madness. The saintess offers no answer, her eyes void of regret. She steps toward the cart and rips away the cloth. Beneath it lies a creature of pure darkness. She observes the abomination as if it were nothing more than a tool. The saintess is unimpressed by the monstrosity. Channeling her immense mana, she points a hand toward a glowing magic circle in the room. The air trembles with power. She declares this a gift for the man who left them behind. The instructor is stunned by her obsession. Her glare sharpens. This is no joke. It is a dark promise of retribution. Back on Earth, the vibe is miserable. The squad is stuck doing construction grunt work instead of hunting monsters. One soldier grumbles, wondering why warriors are digging ditches. It feels pointless. They signed up for glory, not manual labor. Morale is hitting rock bottom. Their complaining is cut short by the roar of an engine. A massive truck pulls in. It is loaded with steel, giant blocks of dungeon ore. The soldiers' souls leave their bodies. Heavy lifting is back on the menu. Nevertheless, the cargo must be moved. Roberval, however, attacks the work with maniacal focus. They call it steel, but it is a mystery alloy found in dungeons, dense, heavy, and nearly unbreakable. It is perfect for fortifications, but hell for the backs of the men moving it. Suddenly, a human voice slips out from Roberval's direction. He instantly freezes. He messed up. Pigeons don't speak. He clamps his mouth shut, terrified of breaking character again while the work continues. While normal men struggle with the truck, he approaches the captain, his face serious. While securing the materials, he picked up some disturbing rumors from headquarters. A new rift panic spread like wildfire among the ranks as the rumors took hold. Desperate soldiers clung to the sergeant, praying this was just a twisted joke. If this is real, our protagonist. Roberval stared in. Hunters classify the second, the mobs, they are the ultimate. Roberval Kim finally snapped. Yet, while the captain stepped up, declaring this a golden age for them to evolve and stack up military achievements. That last word accomplished. Standing on the suddenly his gaze shifted. A shadow droplet was lurking right there in his own silhouette. Kim muttered under his breath, asking what the little spy was doing out here. With eyes everywhere, he casually crushed the droplet under his boot to keep it concealed. He glanced around, channeling his mana through. A new irregular monster had spawned. The investigation team at the Yangu dungeon had already sent a distress signal for backup. That zone, two elite investigators had already blacked out mysteriously. It was a red alert. This dungeon needed to be purged, and fast. But command ordered. That meant all forces. A grin spread across. With the intel secured, his motivation skyrocketed. It was time to cash in that day-off request. Without wasting he meticulously checked his inventory. On the desk, a family portrait of her watched over the room. The captain raised an eyebrow, asking what possessed him to lug around so many heavy steel blocks. It looked like he was but there was a snag. A little sheepish, Kim admitted he would likely hole up in an internet cafe again. The captain sighed. He had predicted that exact answer. Knowing it was his parent. The place was spotless, maintained by the captain himself. Kim tried to refuse the favor, feeling the weight of the debt, but the captain and Kim noted back in his office. Our protagonist stood there for a moment, weighing his next move. Meanwhile, the captain sat back, reviewing Kim's dossier. One detail stood out in the scene. Kim studied the picture, a faint, unreadable smile touching his lips. But sentimental time was over, urgent business awaited. Step 1. He hit the city street. The entire area. This makes infiltration. Finally, the target is in. Technically, if the threat level is inside, a desolate. The air is thick, dripping with oppressive humidity. But then, something catches his eye. A shattered blade lies abandoned in the dirt. Inspecting the steel, Kim realizes a violent clash took place here recently. But as he crouches, the hairs on his neck stand up. He isn't alone. He glances over his shoulder. The shadow. It is a massive goblin. It is a miracle the battle explodes. Kim sees the opening instantly. He drives a devastating fist straight into the creature's skull. But the impact. That punch didn't even crack a tooth. Annoyed by this unnatural durability, Kim delivers a mana-enhanced kick directly to its ugly maw. He creates distance as he weaves through the unnoticed by the beast. Kim has already activated his corruption ability on the soil beneath them. The moment the goblin steps, Kim unleashes realizing the monster can take a. He winds up. The monster blocks. It isn't fatal. It doesn't even make him flinch. But Kim looks down and realizes the unforgivable. His clothes are slightly torn. His gaze drifts to the broken sword on the ground. Slowly, calmly, he picks up the jagged steel. Until now, his enemies were like ants. This incompetent fool, maybe a beetle. Slightly harder to squash, but still an insect. The goblin roars, but the surprise. Nothing happens. Time for the grand. The goblin. He prepares another. Finally, the life system notification. Our protagonist. He pulls up his. The black arrow is. He also received. Then it clicked. It must have been that creature. Kim shakes off the. And there, disappointment washed over him. He hadn't uncovered a divine artifact or a legendary item. It was just a jagged scrap of cold metal. It resembled a shattered arrow. The longer he stared, the more the steel seemed to whisper to him with a chilling familiarity. But the battlefield waits for no one, and he had no time to ponder mysteries. A horde of monsters emerged. A cruel smile played. The goblins glared at our protagonist, their eyes burning with primal hatred, desperate to tear him limb from limb. Dark, malevolent, shadow arrows erupted from his grasp. Two beasts dropped instantly, their bodies rotting away, while the last one froze in sheer terror. His main quest was already complete, but why leave now? He decided to stay a little longer and turn this dungeon into his personal playground. The surviving monster trembled, realizing its final moments would be filled with agony. Kim wasn't about to let a single point of experience slip through his fingers. Outside the dungeon, Kim stepped out. A strange light flickered. The feet hung heavy in the air. From the look in their eyes, every soldier was a walking corpse, drained of all will. Kim marched among them, hiding a smirk. His day off hunting demons had been infinitely more satisfying than this mundane drill. He had harvested souls while they wasted time. He returned brimming with vitality, a stark contrast to his exhausted squad. They dreaded entering the simulation facility, a metal coffin of endless suffering. Loathing radiated from the troops. At the front, the captain barked orders, driving them like cattle toward the objective. The platoon spread out in chaotic formations. Their mission was simple: survive the crossfire and seize the central point. With the terrain map memorized, the captain pushed forward. But then, a low, guttural growl echoed through the training grounds, freezing everyone in place. The captain's face went pale. "Battle stations," he roared. This was no longer a drill. They had to lock in immediately. Panic and adrenaline mixed. They had to adapt or fail. A few brave souls tightened their grips, ready to dance with danger. Suddenly, dark spheres materialized on the horizon, rolling toward them like a tide of death. But these were no ordinary objects. They were biological nightmares, gaping maws filled with razor-sharp fangs. "Hold fire on melee." The captain screamed, "Do not let them touch you." It was time for a symphony of gunpowder. The soldiers dropped to their knees, rifles raised, fingers twitching on the triggers. The elite squad braced for impact. For Kim, however, this wasn't terror. It was the most entertaining party he had attended all week. The order to fire was sweet music to his ears. Light them up. Kim unleashed a hail of lead, his aim supernatural. The void creatures didn't stand a chance. Heavy caliber rounds tore through them, shredding their dark forms into nothingness. As the monsters discovered the afterlife the hard way, the platoon kept the pressure on, turning the field into a kill box. But the sergeant shouted a warning. They're levitating, and their hides are like armor plating. Blades would be useless against such abominations. They had to drop them at range. But the swarm was endless, a black tide threatening to overrun their position before they could reload. The captain realized the grim reality. Cease fire. The creatures were too close. Friendly fire was now a fatal risk. Time for brutality. Only 3 orbs remained. But if they tasted human blood, they would evolve into something unstoppable. The sergeant screamed to guard their necks. Kim knew the truth better than anyone. A single bite meant infection and ruin. If these NPCs went down, his mission rating would crash. One of the abyss balls lunged at a terrified soldier, jaws wide. Not on his watch. Kim's competitive spirit flared. He wasn't about to let a mob steal his perfect score. The beast charged, but Kim stepped in, delivering a kick with the force of a cannon blast that would make a professional striker jealous. The soldiers gasped as the heavy monster was launched into the stratosphere like a ragdoll. It flew so high it nearly kissed the clouds. Kim grinned, with the target helpless, a winning strategy. Fire. The silence fell. The threat was purged. Safe for now, the breathless troops collapsed for a 10-minute recovery to catch their breath. The captain didn't. Medics scrambled to a rare look of respect. The tension radiates, affecting. Exhaustion weighs heavily on the rest of the platoon. They have already survived whispers circulate that another extra drops of bomb. Colonel Mustache had already. In the presence of such overwhelming power, the soldiers are paralyzed by fear. Yet, the colonel had the twist. Their gossip is abruptly. It is time to return to the drained of energy. Upon reaching a new. The truth. It is Colonel Mustache. But as he locks eyes with. Suddenly, an elder sits in calm contemplation. Smoke swirl. That can only mean one thing. He has already shattered that item. Accepting a sword from the trainer, the elder remarks that such destruction is the price of following that woman's orders. His sharp eye. The tip of the weapon has been sheared off. Undeniable proof that the masked man has been slaughtering monsters once again.